Welcome, everyone. My name is Alex Burnett. I'm thrilled to welcome you here on behalf of the Localization Institute. This is a preview webinar for our new Localization Teams Master Class. And I'm thrilled to be here this morning with Ulrich Hennis, the founder of Localization Institute, and our instructor, Mimi Hills. Ulrich and Mimi, how are you today?
Hey, doing good.
And
good
doing
to be
great.
here.
Yeah.
It's so nice to see you both. I just want to make a couple quick announcements before we get started with the webinar. We're really excited. This new masterclass will take place consecutive Wednesdays beginning on April 20th. So April 20, 27th, May 4th, and May 11th. The sessions will run from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Time with some time for questions and answers at the end of each of those sessions. We've already sold about half of the seats in this inaugural class, and as soon as it sells out, we will go ahead and schedule another class. But if you'd like to get in on these initial dates, act quickly. Today's webinar is being recorded. We'll go ahead and post this recording to the Localization Institute YouTube channel and share it afterwards, so you can go back and watch it again if you would like. If you have questions for Mimi today, please feel free to submit them at any time through the Zoom chat there. We're going to save the questions for the end of her presentation, and I will pose them to her at that time. If you have any questions at all in the coming days about this masterclass or any of the Localization Institute classes, please feel free to email me at alex@localizationinstitute.com. I do want to mention briefly that we have a full roster of classes available in the spring semester for Localization Institute. So our Quality Management Masterclass, our Machine Translation Masterclass, the Global Language Strategy Masterclass, and several others are currently scheduled. So if you need more information, please check our website, localizationinstitute.com, or email me. At this time, I'd like to welcome Ulrich up to the stage to introduce Mimi. Ulrich.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Alex. Yeah, I'm Ulrich Hennis, and I started the Localization Institute in 1996. And in fact, right around now, spring of 97 was when we held our first localization management roundtable in California. From the beginning, what I was trying to do is I realized that in localization, things keep on changing and the situation differs greatly between companies, whether you are a fintech company or a hardware manufacturer. So there will always be a lot of learning by trial and error. You just got to try it. Is it working? Yes, no. At the same time, though, in this period, since localization really became very, very important to most companies, we have learned a great deal about what works well and what doesn't work well. And the goal of the Localization Institute in our classes, in our roundtables, is to help you learn what is already the kind of the best practices, what can be learned from what has been gone before, because you'll have a lot of trial and error still in your situation. And in that context, I'm thrilled to have to offer a new class with Mimi Hills, who I've known for many years and is very experienced in all aspects of managing, creating teams, to teach a masterclass on localization teams. Thanks so much, Mimi, and I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Ulrich. And I'm glad you pointed out the trial and error aspect because I think that's true about what we all do. And I would like to pull some of that into the class and make sure that when we talk about the ideas that we're going to be talking about, that we talk about the trials and errors. And I do want to draw from everyone's experience, because I think we all have gone through that. I do want to go over first some of the things that I hope you will get out of the class. One is that there are leadership strategies that you can set to make your team more successful. And some of that comes from the mission and vision that you set for your team and the goals that you set, but they can't stand on their own. They have to come from the overall department goals and the overall company goals. So we'll spend some time talking about that. And likewise, the team culture comes from the greater culture of the department and the culture of the company. Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes it's hard to work within a company's culture when it's not quite right for what you're trying to do. We'll talk about that. But this can be a great motivator when your team feels like they can move forward because they care about what they do and it fits the strategy that you have set, then you will have success. So I also want to talk about some practical techniques for things like hiring and training and managing a diverse localization team. I have to say that one of the things I love about localization is the diversity that we have. We draw people from all different cultures who are interested in language and culture. And that, to me, is something that helps us be successful as managers if we work with that correctly. And then I want to make sure that we talk about how we set up our teams for success within a company and making sure the employees can be successful in their careers as well. So how we work, how you have your team work with the rest of the company is pretty critical. So with those overall ideas, I will go over some of the things that I want to cover each day out of 4 sessions that we have. First of all, the first session is going to cover the team strategy and building the culture. So as I said, we'll talk about how it draws from department strategy, which draws from the company strategy. We'll talk about how you can set a team mission and vision that is right for the work that your department does. One of the interesting things about localization groups is that we're all different sizes and scopes, and there's no one size fits all. So I'm not going to write a mission for you. You get to write that mission. We'll talk about the team culture, the company culture. And here I do want to make sure that people understand that our job as managers is to make sure that the team understands how they contribute to the company. And that's a really critical part of motivation. So we'll spend some time talking about that and about change management, which is something that we as localizers within a corporation often have to do. And finally, we'll talk about the aspects of dispersed teams, both geographically dispersed, but also culturally dispersed teams, because we do draw from people of all different cultures, and that can be a strength. We can make use of that strength. This is one area where I've done a lot of reading recently, and I'm going to share some timely articles. And I do want to mention that I also could include a reading list of some books, because I love to read, and some of these books have been very helpful to me in my career. So the books that I'm going to list for all of the attendees are actually things that I have found to be very practical for me. They're less theoretical and more practical. Okay, so the next part of this class will go on to defining roles and responsibilities. And we'll talk about just a little bit about management structures, horizontally versus vertically organized, and centralized versus decentralized. You might be dedicated to one team, but part of another group. So there's some aspect of how the management is handled. We'll talk about defining factors like what you need now in your group, what the company's expectations are of you and your team versus what you might do for the company in the future, and how you want to build a team that can meet the current needs and also think about the future needs. A really important thing to do. We'll talk about specialists and generalists, and then we'll talk about different aspects that you might have in your department. It could be project management, stakeholder management, tool specialists, product management, linguistic quality experts, other types of quality experts. So I come largely from the software world, where there's a lot of testing. And so software testing for internationalization and localization can be important aspects. And we'll want to talk about those areas as well. We'll also talk about language roles and customers, because there are more and more customer-facing people in localization that might be drawing data from customers that we can use to drive what we do with our team. So we'll talk we're talking about the roles here, not about those ideas. Those are for a different class, and you'll see. So we'll talk about vendors, contractors, employees. This is an interesting area. I hope we have a group that is international for our class, because a lot of this is driven by regulations, and we can learn to work within the regulations that we must. But we can also still learn from other people and how they work within their regulations. There may be learnings that we can bring to our practices. And then in this section, something I also want to look at is to start to look at conflicts and how we handle those within the team. Because one of the most common sets of conflicts is within the different aspects of how people do their jobs. It could be within the same job, project managers doing things different ways, or say a project manager feeling like a tools person is not doing the right things for what they need from the tool. And those kinds of conflicts can be handled, but they're really important actually to let them come out. This is something that I learned from one of my employees who came to me, this was 10 years ago, saying, Mimi, we're in too much agreement. You do want to run smooth meetings, but we're not having the kind of conflicts that generate ideas. We have to discuss, we have to even sometimes argue more. So I want to talk a little bit about that, because that wisdom really changed my practices for a long time. So on the third session, we'll talk a bit about hiring, supporting your team, and managing budget implications. So how do you determine the kind of support that your team members need? They play a role in the company. You may not be able, if it's a big company, you may not have visibility into all of their challenges. And so how we draw those in and make sure that they feel supported and that you can help them figure out what's the right thing to do and back them up, that's really important. Then we'll talk about how you can have career interest discussions with your employees that help you and where you want the teams to grow as well. We'll talk a little bit about managing fear of technology, making jobs obsolete, because that can be an important part of what's going on with localization. We have so many wonderful new technology providers, and we shouldn't be scared of them. There's always more that a human being can do. We'll talk about hiring, working with recruiters, writing a good inclusive job description, the value of cross-vendor client experience. So not just having people who've worked within the industry, but having people who've come from maybe from the vendor side it is an important aspect. We'll talk a little bit about what I mentioned earlier, hiring. Do you hire for today for what you need right now? Or do you hire people who can handle what you need tomorrow as well? And then we'll talk a little bit about job leveling. And then also on this day, we're going to talk about the ups and downs of running a department. So there are reorgs, reorganizations, there are acquisitions, and then sometimes you have to handle layoffs as well. And there are tools and techniques you can use to handle those things with compassion, which is something that I really believe in, that helps you work with your employees. It helps you continue to work with other people within the company. Then the final day, we'll talk about growing and transforming your team. So one thing I want to talk about is how our communication styles as managers and leaders affect the rest of the team. We set the stage for that. And so that's really pretty important. Leading by example. I actually, I do expect that we will have some people who are not managers, but aspiring to be managers in the class. And I hope that they contribute to this discussion as well, because I think they can show us what they've learned from their managers and their perceptions of what the managers are doing and why. It's a different view that we can learn from as we talk about management and leadership. So we'll also talk about how we grow our team members. And I do believe that if you've hired right, you've got people who are smarter than you in different areas. So you've got the best people for the tools, you've got the best people for project management. How do you support them? How do you help them set smart goals? How do you help them set the smart goals that are right for them as well? And then how do you help them with more training? There are technical skills in localization, but there's also a whole lot of soft skills that we need to know to manage our jobs. So think about how your project managers, for example, work within the company. How can we help them learn the right communication, negotiation, change management skills? So a lot to learn there. So that's not just change management that we need to handle as managers, but change management that your team needs to handle directly in order to do their jobs. And then we'll talk about their career paths and how we can talk about career goals with our team, because that's an important part of support. Retaining people depends on them being happy and feeling like they are being fulfilled. So we want to make sure that our team is feeling like they are growing within their jobs. And then we'll talk about growing and transforming the team itself. How do you grow a team so that it'll scale if your company is growing? How, if you see yourself with maybe just, you might be the only person actually in a department, how are you going to hire your first project managers? And how are they going to help you develop a team that is more project managers? And then when you're ready for other parts, how are you going to add quality management, for example? Or it might first be a tools person that you bring into your company to help you manage your projects. And then how do you bring visibility to your team and celebrate the wonderful things that your team has done, and make sure that other people in the company know how well your team is doing? Because if they don't know, you're not going to be able to celebrate that success more widely. And then we want to talk about how do you transform your team, or taking it to the next level. And this is actually something I learned from my most recent manager, that you're getting a promotion may be dependent on how you manage your team. And so helping them get to the next level and transforming this can actually help you get your next promotion. So that's kind of the week by week, blow by blow that I hope to go through in this class. And I do want to say again that I'd like to welcome people who are aspiring managers as well as managers themselves. I think it would be interesting. It's mostly geared for people in industry on the client side, but it might be interesting to have a few people who are on the vendor side who want to come in to the client side as well, because I do believe we can all learn from each other. And one last thing I wanted to say is I do have loads of experience in the software world, but I think that we have to learn from other industries as well. And so I am hoping that we have people, for example, I've had a lot of discussions with people from the medical side of the industry, medical devices, as well as medical treatments. And the regulation there is fascinating. And I hope we have, for example, people there joining. And then I hope we have people joining from the games industry, because games run really fast. They're very agile. And I've actually had people in my team who've come from the games industry who've taught me to be more agile and help the department be more agile. So I do hope we have a very diverse group of people joining us for this class. And now, Alex, I'd like to turn it over to you and see if we have some questions.
Presentation, Mimi, and a great overview of the various topics and session focus that will be throughout the course. So thank you for that. We do have a question right away, and this is a great question. Will you be discussing knowledge management across dispersed teams, as well as motivating experienced localization professionals that have been in the industry for, say, 15 to 20 years?
Absolutely. So I'll just mention that at my most recent company, so to address the second part first, I had some great people with a lot of experience. And as your team grows, or as you bring in more experienced people, I do believe there's more and more that a localization team can do within a company, influencing parts of the company, setting up your department so that you can help those people grow is a really important part of that. And so I do want to discuss that. And then knowledge management across dispersed teams, I think, is really important. So one of the things that I've learned about is that mentoring can be a key piece of this. And it's not just having your most experienced people mentor the people who need to learn the ropes, so to speak, in the department, but it's about hearing from those people who maybe have just come out of school and have learned some great techniques and can reverse mentor those of us who've been out of school for a while and need to learn a thing or two from that group. And then knowledge management, I guess there's a number of ways you can take this question, but how do you keep that body of knowledge? Where do you store that kind of information? Do you keep a wiki so that people can all contribute to the collective knowledge of the department? That's one way that you can manage that. And that's actually how I did that in my last team. Really useful. And yes, we do want to talk about all of that. And I would love to hear about other people's ideas there too.
Great. And one thing about these courses that's really nice is we keep it to a maximum of 20 students per course, which allows for a very interactive discussion. While Mimi will be lecturing and teaching you, we want to leave time at the end of each of our sessions and throughout the sessions for discussion as well. So you'll have a chance to participate, to share ideas, and ask questions of not only Mimi, but of your other peers in the class as well. So I'd like to say, if you have other questions, please submit them in the chat right now. Mimi, I wonder, would you mind briefly telling us a little bit about your background? Maybe just talk a minute about some of the companies that you've worked with.
Sure. So the three big companies that I've worked for in localization have been Sun Microsystems, which was once a huge company and is now part of Oracle Corporation. Then I went to BlackBerry. It was then called, at the time it was called RIM, and it was at the height of the BlackBerry device, if you remember that. And it was actually different for me because it was used there was both the enterprise side of the business and the consumer side of the business. And it was a place where in enterprise software, we might do, 8 basic languages and maybe up to 20 for specific products. And at BlackBerry, we were getting up in the up towards 40 languages, which was way fun to learn about different languages there. And then most recently, for the last, 7 years, I think I was at VMware, which is a cloud provider. So another super agile company moving ahead. Actually, we had all kinds of software. Some parts of the thing was super agile and some of it was more like system software that had to stay very stable. So I saw all sides of that part of the software industry as well.
Great. Our next question is, will the course cover technology leadership and management of technical and engineering teams at all? For example, internationalization engineers?
I do want to cover some of this. We'll talk about the different kinds of roles we can have. I think that I'll probably manage this as specific parts of localization. So I think a lot of people will come from groups that are not in the software industry. And so this probably will be a less universal topic, but I think it's an important one. The other technical part, I think, is the tools part, because a lot of people might have some technical people running for example, your TMS system. And so you will want to know how you manage technical people. So that is a really important part of some kinds of localization. So yes, we'll cover that.
Great. Another question, will this course cover sourcing of translators at all? For example, freelance translators by any chance?
Well, I would say we're not going to cover translators directly, because this is mostly about managing your internal team, but we will cover some decision-making around why you would choose translators, employees, or contractors, and what you are looking for and how you interview for them, which I think is applicable to translators or employees. You can't always ask a translator the same question that you might ask an employee, at least in the United States, because of the labor laws. But it's and vice versa, actually. But the information that we'll cover will be applicable to all.
Great. And we don't want to give away too much, but someone looking for a little preview here, can you tell us right now one of the books that you think is super relevant to a localization professional?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this the other day. There's a book, and right now, because I don't have it in front of me, I don't remember the name of the author, but it's called First Break All the Rules, which, first of all, I love that title, but I was thinking about this in the context of how diverse a localization team was. And one of the first things it talks about, what it's saying about breaking the rules, is don't think that to be fair to your team, you have to treat everyone equally. So you have to go in, talk to your employees about what they want, try to understand them, understand their strengths and then their goals. And you might be able to manage your resources better that way. So for example, some people are interested in staying at the company in a long time. If you are so lucky as to have stock options that you get to grant to people, those people might appreciate the stock options. And then you might have someone who is learning and maybe less interested in that, but is really feeling the pain of a low salary in a market where there's a lot of inflation right now. And so you might want to be, just knowing those things about your employees will help you make a difference. And so that First Break All the Rules, it's a wonderful book for managing people in general, but especially when we get people as diverse as we get in a localization team.
Great. And it sounds like Rita recognizes that one from Marcus Buckingham. So
thank you.
Well, if you have a question, please submit it now. We are at the top of the half hour here. I want to go ahead right away and thank everyone for your time today. We're really excited about the Localization Teams Master Class. It's going to start on April 20th, and there are still seats available. So if you have additional questions, I don't see any other right now, so we'll adjourn. But feel free to email me, Alex at Localization Institute, if you have any questions about the class or the schedule. I can also pass those questions on to Mimi if you need some more clarification. So Mimi, thanks so much for your time today, and really excited to launch this first class with you.
Great. I'm excited too. Thanks, Alex. And thank you all for coming.
Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful day.